Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are diving into something that sounds, well, deceptively simple, a concept you probably learned in elementary school grammar class. But we're going to use it as a kind of philosophical key, a
Mm,
key to unlocking a fundamentally different way of seeing your identity, your purpose, and really the entire 13.8 billion years of cosmic history.
that's exactly right. Our sources for this are from completely different worlds. We're pulling from the theoretical physics of Richard Feynman, the let's call it radical self-definition of Buckminster Fuller, and all the way back to the ancient wisdom of the Tao Te Ching. And our mission really is to show you that while our minds rely on static things on nouns, the universe itself seems to operate as a dynamic, continuous process, as a verb.
Yeah, a verb. We spend our lives chasing nouns, don't we? A job title, a salary, a category, a possession, all nouns. And yet, this deep dive suggests that true freedom, maybe true mastery, comes from shedding those definitions, from embracing the verb of your own existence. We're going to explore why Buckminster Fuller said, God, to me it seems, is a verb, and why knowing the name of a bird tells you nothing about the bird.
This is so much more than just semantics. It's a complete shift in perspective, and that shift really has to begin with recognizing the linguistic illusion that, we all live inside.
Which brings us right to Alan Watts. He argued pretty forcefully that nouns are just parts of speech. They're labels we invented. They are not, and this is the key, they are not parts of nature.
That's the critical distinction right there. Watts insists no nouns in the physical world. And if you stop and think about it for a second, he's right. We look at a waterfall. We call it a waterfall, a thing, a noun. But in reality, it's perpetually, well, water falling. We see the planet Earth, but it is constantly orbiting, rotating, evolving. It is a relentless series of processes that we just freeze with a label so we can point and say, that.
So the moment we name something, we're cutting it off from the whole. We're creating an artificial separation in what Watts calls one continuous unfolding event.
And our own language forces us to do it. The rule is that every verb needs a subject, right? Usually a noun. This creates a really deep psychological bind. So if there's the process of, say, knowing or thinking, our language forces us to invent a separate knower or a thinker, a static I that's doing the action.
And that's where all the anxiety comes from, isn't it?
Yeah.
We invent this internal I, this noun, and then we tell it, okay, you have to control all these verbs. You have to control feeling, seeing, worrying. But if you just look at nature, like Watts says, does the wind need a winder to blow?
No.
No, there's just winding. When I say I am feeling, what's really happening is there is feeling here. The language is what makes us invent that separate I.
Precisely. We try to launch a process with a thing.
Yeah.
And that logical fallacy that a static entity can somehow start a dynamic action, that's what creates so much of our internal tension. It sets an impossible job for the self.
But wait, don't we need that separation? I mean, don't we need categories to even communicate? If I can't call it a tree, how do we even begin to talk about the complex biological process of treeing?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, of course. The nouns, the categories, they are an indispensable map. The danger is when we mistake the map for the actual territory, when the label becomes more real to us than the process itself.
And that leads perfectly into Richard Feynman's story about his father and the bird.
Yeah.
Feynman talks about how this other kid would always one-up him, naming every bird with its scientific name, and Feynman would just say, I have not the slightest idea.
Right. But his father had taught him something much deeper. He'd say, look, you can know the name of that bird in every single language on Earth, a brown-throated thrush, whatever it is, but when you're all done, you will know absolutely nothing whatever about the bird.
You only know about humans.
Exactly.
About humans in different places and what they call the bird. The name is just a human filing system. It helps us sort things. It tells you nothing about what the bird actually does. The action.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
The name is for organization. The action is the reality. So if we can accept that the world out there is this ongoing dynamic verb, what happens when we apply that same static naming system to ourselves?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if reality is just continuous action, then what does that mean for our identity? How do you stop being a static noun that's just waiting to fail or break?
This is the real pivot point. Buckminster Fuller, after years of engineering and thinking about structures, had this huge realization. He completely rejected the idea of being a category. He said, I know that I am not a category, I am not a thing, a noun, I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, an integral function of the universe.
Wow, an integral function of the universe.
Yeah.
That's massive. It means you're not just in the process of the universe, you are the process. Fuller even took this to the concept of God, not a fixed person or a historical figure,
Hmm.
but the continuous creative force itself. He said, God, to me, it seems, is a verb, not a noun.
And the power in that is immense. If the universe is always evolving and you are a function of that evolution, then you can't be defined by a temporary state or a past mistake. You were always in motion. You're a process, not a finished product.
And clinging to the noun identity is, as Stephen Fry puts it, a form of imprisonment.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. When you say, I am a CEO, or I am a writer, or even I am a failure, you define yourself by that noun. You immediately put limits on your potential and you create this huge vulnerability. What happens when the company fails? Or you can't write for a year. Who are you then? Your definition is broken.
But if you just see yourself as a person who does things,
Yes.
a person who acts, who writes today, who might learn something new tomorrow, who is always evolving, you stay open, you're free because your identity isn't stuck to a label.
And this brings us right back to the Tao Te Ching. It famously says the unnameable is the eternally real. By refusing to pin a name on yourself, by refusing to be a noun, you align with that unnameable dynamic duality of the Tao.
And the nameable, the noun, that's what the Taoists say, creates all particular things.
Yeah.
The specific things we see when we're, what was the phrase, caught in desire.
Exactly. Desire for titles, for status, for permanence. If you want to grasp the real mystery of it all, you have to let go of that desire to categorize and define. It's about being unbound. That's ultimate freedom.
That makes so much sense on a personal level. But let's zoom out. Let's take this whole framework reality as a verb and apply it to the biggest picture possible. We have these sources that compress all 13.8 billion years of cosmic history into a single calendar year, January 1st to December 31st.
And when you look at that timeline, the sheer scale of continuous action is it's staggering. The universe isn't a museum of static things. It's a single, unfolding, epic verb.
Look at the very beginning. On January 1st, the universe doesn't just exist. It begins expanding. It's an action, an explosion. Then a few weeks later, the first stars don't just appear, they ignite. They begin this furious process of fusion, of creating heavier elements.
Right, like the iron mentioned in the notes.
Yeah, this is a violent, dramatic, eons-long verb.
And that continuous action is what makes everything else possible. It's this constant stellar forging that populates the cosmos with the ingredients for life. And later in the cosmic year, maybe around September, life emerges. And not in a single moment. It's eons of chemical processing and slow biological adapting.
And then even later, photosynthesis emerges, and in doing so, it fundamentally changes the entire atmosphere. The Earth itself becomes a new process. Human history, too. It's all verbs. Fire spreads. People migrate. Writing emerges.
The timeline just confirms it. Everything is an unfolding. And we only occupy the last few seconds of December 31st on this calendar. But the crucial insight here is that you aren't some separate, static thing dropped into this timeline. You are the result of this whole massive verb. You are the star-stuffed dreaming. You are the life force of the universe in motion.
We are the unfolding. Okay, so if we truly embody that, if we are a verb, how does that change how we act? This is where it goes from a cool idea to a practical way of living. And that brings us to the Taoist concept of wu-wei.
Wu-wei. The shift from seeing yourself as a noun to seeing yourself as a verb defines this whole moral and practical approach. But it's often translated really poorly as non-action, which makes people think of, being lazy.
Right. It's not about just sitting on the couch and doing nothing. So if that's a misunderstanding, what does this way of acting actually look like? How do you practice wu-wei when you've got bills to pay and deadlines to meet?
It means practicing not doing in the sense that you allow events to take their natural course. You align with the flow instead of trying to interfere with your ego. Think of it like sailing. A sailor doesn't try to stop the wind. That's the massive, ongoing process.
Right, that would be pointless.
Exactly. You just adjust your sails, your own small action, to work with the wind. You move forward with minimal friction.
So instead of forcing an outcome, you engage with the process, but you let go of trying to control the end result. The Tao says this is acting with no expectations, or having without possessing.
You give birth and you nourish, but you don't claim ownership.
And this leads to that paradox of mastery, right? Where the sources say the best way to be is like water.
Yes. Water is soft. It's yielding. But nothing is better at dissolving the hard and the inflexible. The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid.
The verb, the flow, the adaptability is always stronger than the fixed noun that's trying to resist it.
And this applies to our own function, too. The Tao reminds us that we work with being, with the nouns and objects around us. But the real utility is in the non-being. The emptiness is what we actually use.
You mean like the hole in the center of a wheel that makes it useful? Or the emptiness inside a pot that lets it hold something?
Precisely. The noun is the clay pot. The verb, the function, is the emptiness inside that allows it to hold, to contain. The emptiness is the potential, the capacity for flow. If you focus too much on being the rigid, named pot, you forget that your purpose, your doing, comes from creating that space. A masker is someone who doesn't seek fulfillment through definitions. By not seeking, not expecting, she's present. She can welcome all things because she embodies that flexible capacity.
This draws such a clear line, then, between a life spent chasing nouns and a life spent practicing being a verb. In the pursuit of knowledge, of categorizing and labeling the world, of adding nouns, the source says every day something is added. You get more titles, more facts, more stuff.
But in the practice of the Tao, the practice of the verb, it says every day something is dropped. You need to force things less and less. You clutter your mind with fewer rigid ideas until you finally arrive at this effortlessness, this state of non-action. The real goal is to unlearn, to simplify, to realize that the more definitions you cling to, the more you know, the less you understand.
So we started with grammar, just nouns and verbs, and we ended up at cosmology, identity, and really profound wisdom. This deep dive shows that life isn't about becoming a fixed title or a permanent category. It's about engaging fully with the dynamic, unfolding process of the universe.
Which leaves a really important question for you, for anyone listening. If you choose to stop defining yourself with rigid nouns, if you stop trying to be a success or be a failure, you free yourself to just do. You go from being a static, fragile object that can be broken to being part of an unstoppable, adaptable flow.
And when you embrace that flow, you find a kind of effortless mastery. Because the greatest lesson of the verb is about letting go. True mastery can be gained by letting things go their own way. It can't be gained by interfering. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone.